Hey Camping Nation, welcome back. Today we're going over how to grease the bearings, why to grease the bearings, how often, so on and so forth, and I'm on a time crunch. Today's Tuesday, day after Memorial Day, and we roll out for Michigan on Friday for a whole week vacation. I'm Andy, this is We Love to Camp. Here's the tools you're going to need. Lug wrench, needle nose pliers, channel locks, a jack. You can use a bottle jack. You could even use a mechanical jack if you have one strong enough, and some cardboard to lay on. Okay, we are underneath the camper now. This is the front axle, and that's the rear axle. People will tell you not to lift by the axle beam. Do not ever lift from here. That's the center. Don't ever lift from here. That's like 1/3 of the way-ish. I've seen people lift here and have no problems at all. I've even done it. I haven't done it on a big camper like this, but I've done it. You could pick up right here on the leaf pack. That's a safe place. Or get between the two. If your jack is strong enough, you can pick up right here. You're putting a lot of pressure on here, but you can pick it up here. Personally, I say right here is the best place. The bottom of the spring pack, right by the axle. Right there's the axle. Right here. That's probably your best bet. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Don't lose those. Set that off to the side. I forgot to mention a couple tools. Okay, additional tools: hammer, cheap screwdriver, you're trying to hammer, you get between the hub and the cap. See that rib? You get in there, and then you start twisting and turning it off. Now, before anybody yells at me for having my leg underneath here, being supported by just a floor jack, if this were to go down, it's going to sit on the jack, and it's going to be higher than my leg. Plus, with this wheel on here, I don't even think this will hit the ground. As bad as my knees are messed up right now, I can't fold them both up. Okay. Now you'll see this has a Zerk fitting or a grease fitting. That is to grease the hub assembly, but it's not a good way of doing it. We'll go over that later. So you take that off. That's where the channel locks come in handy, because this does not have to be tight. See? It's loose. If you tighten it, you're going to screw up the bearings. I should have a paper towel out here. Yes. So you saw, I tried pulling it off. It didn't want to budge. All you got to do now is going to take 2 lug nuts and zip them on here. You don't have to tighten them down. You don't have to go with ugga-duggas. Just run them down. If you don't know what an ugga-dugga is, that's the sound an impact makes when it's hammering on the lug nut. Yeah, those are ugga-duggas. So what I did is I kicked right here, and with the added leverage, it just popped the whole thing loose, and it knocked the drum to start sliding off of the spindle. And in order for it to come off, the bearings have to come out. And as you'll see here in just a second, the bearings are tapered, which dictates a tapered seat bearing race. Come on. There we go. Not today. It's all right. We're going to clean them anyways. All right. Here's a little magic trick. I already verified that these brakes work. I did a little brake check when I brought it in here. And all 4 tires locked up. So I know the magnet right here. I know the magnet's working. I know the wires are working. They send the electricity to the magnet, then the magnet comes out and sucks onto the side of the drum, and then just through leverage, this magnet pushes on this arm, which then pushes both shoes out like that, and then those 2 shoes run up against the brake surface on the inside of the drum. That's the basic of how this happens, how this works. And then that spring draws them back together once you let off the brakes. These springs and clips hold the whole thing onto the backing plate. The reality is, it is so cheap just to replace the entire backing plate assembly. You just cut the wires, take off these 4 bolts, 1, 2, and then that's twins on the other side there. That's all you have to do. 4 bolts, probably nuts on the back. Cut 2 wires, pull it off, go, match it up, come back, boom, 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 done. Much better than dealing with all this. Okay, so this is the inside of the drum here. One of the things you're looking for is grease and oil all over this. This has a little bit, and that's okay. I'm talking if it's just hemorrhaging, then all this would be covered. Yeah, not that, but all this would be covered and nasty, and then you'd end up having to replace it all, to include the drum. So that is okay. What you want to do now, you want to wipe this off. The cleaner you get it, the better. I don't know if you guys can make it out. I've got lettering here. I've got something over here that says Dexter. It's a Dexter axle assembly. Fusion Incorporated. And then right here is the magic number. I can almost make it out. Old guy tech tip. Grab your phone. Zoom in on it. Take a picture. Then you can take the picture, and zoom in on it. 010-019-00. That should be the number I need. Get a new seal. Okay. Now you've got that in your phone, and you'll have your phone when you go to the parts store. Now here's a little tech tip I learned at the diesel shop. Go ahead and take your drum, slide it back on. Take the nut, spin it on there. You're not spinning it all the way down, you're just getting it on there. You pull the drum off and you let it slide down. So what's happening is that nut, the hub just fell down like that. And now you got the bearing coming up against the nut. Once you get that, you just something a little more persistent. What you do that, what this does is it gets, hold on. What it does is it takes the bearings, pushes it up against the seal, and drives the seal off of the hub. And this can actually be reused if needed. I don't like doing that. That's like taking a shower and putting on dirty underwear. But hey, sometimes you have to do that too. Right now what I'm doing, I'm just giving you a quick wipe down. What you're looking for, these are the bearings, this is the race, the cage, and this is the inner race. What you're doing is making sure that these look nice and pretty, shiny chrome, no rust, no pitting, no cracks, no deformities, no chunks missing, just nice, pretty. You don't even have to know what you're looking at, okay? But you want them all to look the same. You want them all to look like this, just pretty chrome. Find anything wrong in there and you need to replace them. And you don't just replace one, you replace both. And then you also have to knock out the race out of the hub, and that's a pain. I'll let you look that up on somebody else's page, because I hope I never have to do that. I'm gonna wipe all that off. I'm gonna wipe all this grease out of the hub. And you shouldn't need any brake clean on here. Yes, everything feels beautiful. I have no discoloration, no blues and purple and dark reds right here, which indicate heat. Everything looks great. See the outer bearing. Yes, looks great. Preliminary inspection, the bearings look fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go by that preliminary inspection, and I'm going to assume all the wheels are good. I'm just going to go to the store and I'm going to get the wheel seal. I am going to see if these bearings are on hand, see if they're in stock, and if they are, I'm going to find out how many. That way I can run to the store if I need to when I find out I've got messed up bearings. But for now, I'm going to assume that they're all good. And I don't want to hear about what assume means. What it means is I can't pick up all four wheels at the same time on this. That's what it means. There's numbers on the bearing somewhere. I don't have my glasses. There's numbers on the bearing somewhere. You take it to a good parts store, to a Napa, probably a farm implement store like Rural King, one of those places. They should be able to look at the number and cross-reference it. There it is. There's the number. Oh, L68149. UNA-D. China. Who would have guessed? W2075. I can't believe I can read that without my glasses. So I'm going to go ahead and take these with me. That and that. Wrap them up in paper towel. Ziploc baggie would work good. Matter of fact, I'm going to wrap them up in a paper towel and then I'm going to put them in a Ziploc bag. And definitely take this bad boy with me. And that's another one. Let's clean it up. The parts guy never likes having to comb through your grime. So if you can walk up and show it to him and it be nice and pretty and clean, he's going to appreciate that and be more likely to get you what you need. You know, there's times when you walk into the parts store and say, hey, I need this. And they say, nope, ain't got it. He doesn't even want to look it up. That usually happens after you slam a nasty, dirty starter on his workbench, and he doesn't want to touch it. He'd say, nope, ain't got it. I know that part. Plus, this way, you get this thing all cleaned up while you're standing there, and he hands you the replacement one, or actually ones, because you're getting 4. You can actually sit there and look at it and compare new and old and see if it looks right. Even though he's a parts guy and he's supposed to be a professional, yeah, you still got to look at it. Okay. Even some of your regular parts houses will have these. Now, the guys won't have any knowledge, but if you go to AutoZone, there's a good chance that they have these. But you've got to do the legwork. You've got to tell them the number. You've got to tell them to cross-reference it. They're going to ask you what it comes off of. You just tell them it's a trailer with a Dexter axle, or whatever axle you have. I think Dexter's the common one. But regardless, this is all I need. I'm going to clean up my mess. I'm going to go get in the shower. Come back to this tomorrow. I'm going to toss a jack stand under here too. I don't need some kids messing around. It's ancient. You know it's good. There we go. If that gives out, this will catch it. This will never even hit the ground. Another example of how cheap I am. In 1994, when I first got to Fort Hood, got to the motor pool, first thing I was told was take this and another one that doesn't match it. And I was told, go throw these in scrap metal. They are outdated and out of the inventory. That was in 94, and here it is 29 years later, and I'm still using it. Cheap. Oh, that was fun. I got seals. It's a little more difficult than I thought. Our last camper, I was able to just go to a parts store, to a AutoZone or a O'Reilly's, and I got them right off the shelf. They didn't have them for this camper. This has heavier duty axles. I went to Tractor Supply and they wanted $30 for two. It'd be $60 just in seals. Not gonna happen. So I went to our local camper store, expecting them to be overpriced. And I'm trying to remember the name of the place. I'll put it right up here. But anyways, I went there and they had them on the shelf for $10.09 for two. So yes, I got two. And then they offered a veterans discount too. Sweet. He just happened to see my VA card when I opened up my wallet, and he asked and offered. Now, before anybody starts saying anything, yes, the ones at Tractor Supply were of better quality. Those were national seals, and that's pretty much as good as it gets. These are Tekonsha, something like that. Made in China. While I do usually prefer quality pieces, this thing is not going to get 150,000 miles put on it in the next 12 to 18 months. So the cheaper seals will do. Scoop all of this goodness out. Got to be careful setting these drums down on their face like that, because remember, the wheel studs are hitting the concrete also. And it doesn't take much to mess up those threads. It's the drum, and this is the hub. And you'll see inside here, this is the race. There we go, you can see color difference. This is the shiny race, that's where the bearings ride. And then that down here is the hub, and then down here is another race. You got inner and outer bearings. Now, just like on the bearing surface, what you're looking for is a smooth, shiny, non-pitted surface. And this is acceptable. Now we're on the other side. This is on the outside. So as you would expect, it is called the outer bearing. There we go, focus. And this is acceptable. There's a couple trains of thought here, and I'm shooting somewhere in between the two. Some people say that you have to use a solvent and get all the grease out of here. They say this grease is old and contaminated. However, this grease was perfectly fine. It's not contaminated with dirt. It's not filled with water. So how contaminated is it? The only thing that's in this grease is what's going to be in the new grease as soon as it starts running. There's a lot of people that truly believe that there's going to be solvent left in the bearings, no matter how hard you try to get them cleaned out and dry. I don't know if there's been studies done. It makes sense, but you know, whatever. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pack these bearings and leave that grease in there and just push it out with the new grease. And there will be some old grease left in, but it will be mostly new grease. Bearings are made in China. Nice. Repacking the bearings is not a glamorous job, but it is an important job. And a lot of people will go ahead and farm this out, take it to the dealer, take it to a mechanic, and have them do it. But you're not always positive that they're going to do it properly. Sure, usually they do, but the reality is if they don't do it right, then you get a hub and a spindle that goes bad. You're on the side of the road. It ruins your whole vacation. You end up spending $3,000 on a whole new axle because you can't get somebody to come in and weld on a new spindle. And that will completely ruin your vacation. And the dealer or mechanic won't do anything about it. They'll just say, yeah, you'll have that sometimes. Now there's also two ways to do this. You got the cheap way, and then you've got the easy way. The cheap way, you just get a ball of grease, put it in the palm of your hand, and you take this and just scrape like that. And what you're doing is you're packing grease in through here until it comes out over here. And you'll start to see the black and red grease come out first, and then whatever you're using comes out. And you just pack, turn it a little bit, keep going, and each time you smack, you're scooping more grease off of the ball. That's great. It works awesome. It's worked for 1,000 years. Okay, it's worked for a couple hundred years. But we've got the technology and the tools and the know-how to not have to do that. This is another cheap Harbor Freight piece. You just drop the bearings down in here and push it down. All right. Okay, that was not a successful pack. I can still see a spot on this side that is still has the old grease. Screw that down and push. There we go. I'm content. All right. And then you can take a little bit of grease that's on there and just smear them. clean place to set the packed bearings. There's the other bearings. There's the other bearings. Some people tell you have to do this every single year, religiously. And it's not a bad idea. It's messy. It costs a little bit of money. It costs a lot of money if you take it to the dealership. And all you're getting is peace of mind. However, the flip side to that is, like I said, if you burn up a hub, because what happens, the bearings will get really, really hot, turn everything bright red like molten metal, and the entire hub with the wheel, brake drum, all of it flies off. And odds are you're not going to notice it at first. That wheel could go through and take out somebody's windshield, take out the front end of their car. I don't know if you've seen the video of that car that hit the wheel and just went airborne. I'll see if I can't dig it up. It was pretty impressive. So there's all kinds of things that can happen if your bearings go bad. You know, the least of it is paying thousands of dollars to unscrew it up. The thing is, people say, you know, well, I don't have to pack the bearings on my car every year. What's the difference? The difference is most of your cars these days don't have wheel bearings like this. They have a sealed hub bearing assembly. It's mostly only 1 ton and up that have serviceable bearings. And even a lot of them have hubs these days. So this is a dying art. This is a dinosaur design. And then they'll say, well, I remember back in the 60s, I didn't have to have my bearings packed all the time. Every time you got your brakes done, they would pack your bearings. So you'd be pulling all this off, the drum off and the hub to get to the brakes, and they'd do all this as it goes back together. So you were getting it done, you just didn't know it. So do you have to do it every single year? No. If the camper never moves, then that's bad. If you put 5,000 miles on it in the summer, then you probably ought to check the bearings. So it's the two extremes is when you really have problems. But like I said, the main reason you're doing this is to inspect it. You inspect it for pitting, you inspect it for bluing of the metal, indicating heat. It doesn't have to just be blue, it can be blue, purple, red. Any colors on the metal is bad. You're doing it to look at the brakes. You're doing it to adjust the brakes if need be. So there's a lot more than just putting grease on the bearings. Now, if you have this Dexter Easy Lube, then I would say you can go every other year. Get yourself a grease gun and just pump a few pumps of grease in there, and then roll the wheel, jack it up, roll the wheel, pump some grease in, roll the wheel again, and only put like 2 or 3 squirts in every time. And that's all it takes. Twice, two or three shots twice, and spin the wheel. And then on the next year, you do this. And then the following year, you do the greasing. Now, if you have bearing buddies, those shouldn't even be on campers. Those are for water trailers, and all it's supposed to do is displace the water. It's not a great design, it's not a great tool, it's not for this application. Just stick with either the Easy Lube or doing it manually. Now, I've heard of plenty of stories, and I even have my own story of going a few years without doing this. On our first camper, I think I went 4 years before I ever did it. And as a former mechanic, I definitely knew better. But for some reason, I just never bothered. So now we have to put the inner bearings in and the seal. And again, there's different ways you can do this. And since I can't find the tools that I need to do this, we're going to do it the cheap way. Cheap, easy, and most of you will have the tools needed. Okay, so all I did here is I just put a light coat of grease on the bearing race surface. You see, I just put a light coat of grease on there. Take the rear bearings and just, you know, like I said, they're tapered, small, big. Put the small end down in there and set it flat down inside the race. This one's the excess grease. You just stick it down in there. Now, a seal driver would be awesome. And a seal driver, it would be a tool that goes around the entire seal, and usually it has something that goes inside here to locate it on the driver. And you just take it and you hammer it down, and you hammer it down straight and smooth. But I don't have that. You could use a large socket. It takes a pretty big socket. You know, the other way to do this, the normal way that you would do it if it was a smaller piece, is get a socket, like out of a socket set. And you get the largest one, pretend this is a chrome socket. You just put it on there like that, and maybe get an extension, or you can just beat on the socket. But you tap it in with a hammer, and you tap it in smooth and straight, and you're pressing it in. Well, we can't do that. So we're going to do it the cheapest of cheap ways. You need a hammer. Not a hammer, just a hammer, a tap. Now I know from your angle you can't really see, but it's sitting like this right now. I'm exaggerating for effect. So what I need to do is I need to tap on this side and bring that down. And then if this side is up, I need to tap that down. And then same thing, tap, 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 tap. You heard the sound change. The sound changed once the seal was driven all the way in, and then I was tapping on the hub, the outer ring right here. So you were hearing the drum ringing instead of the dull thud on the seal. That's when you know it's good. Now this is done. Now we're back onto this. Notice these still have the old grease on them. We got to clean those up. And it is just as simple as wiping it off with a paper towel. You're going to go through paper towels doing this. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, because this grease was perfectly fine when we took it apart. But the more you can get off, the better. Now, you do want to get this black grease off if you can. You want to get all the black grease off if you can, because that is contaminated grease. Usually it's metal shavings or metal bits or environmental dirt. But regardless, if the grease was supposed to be red and you've got black on there, then the black is not clean grease. Believe it or not, that's considered a brake service in some places. They pull off the drum, they inspect it, they clean it, they adjust it, call it good. Set that off to the side. That will evaporate. One more thing you want to do before you start putting it together is just take a little tiny bit of grease and put it on this lip right here. And what this is, this rubber cup ring goes on and slides over that. And then this spins on that. It just spins on that lip. So a little bit of grease will help lubricate that, make this slide on easier and not tear it. And it'll give it a little bit of lube for before the grease starts flowing. So when the grease heats up, it flows a little bit and then it lubricates parts like that. But if you just pre-lube it, life's a lot better. So you put some on here and you can put some on the inside of the seal on the hub. Now this is ready to start going back together. You don't want to slide it on real hard at first because this has got that rubber lip. You don't want to jab it on the threads. You don't want to slam it onto there, onto that lip. You want to try and just ease it into place. Just like that. Then you got the inner bearing. And again, you got the taper. You'll see which way it goes. It can only go in one way. Lift the drum up a little bit and then drive it in. Get your washer. Now if you're working outside like this, especially if you're working in gravel, you want to, every time you pick up a piece, before you put it on, you want to make sure there's no debris on it. Now you see, that's as far as I can get it in by hand. But that's not going to be tight enough. Actually, it might be. I don't feel any play. It doesn't take a big giant socket. All you need is a pair of channel locks. Spin it, tighten it, spin it, tighten it. Now, see how quickly that stops? That's too tight. But you just set the bearings. That is beautiful right there. Then you put this doodad back on here, which this is just a lock. You've got this piece that goes into the spline, well, goes on the flat side here, and then all these keep the nut from turning. They used to use a cotter pin. Now we use this. There. And it's done. That's one. This is just another one that you don't go pounding on it. Just tap it until it's seated. And put your rubber cap on there. Wheel. I didn't hammer any of them down. Okay. It's on the ground. So I've just got an old style snap-on torque wrench. It was calibrated 25 years ago, so I'm sure it's still good. And this type, this is old school now. You crank the handle, and these are supposed to be like 95 pounds. Right there. And then you Click that back and it locks it. Now you're ready. Now they say you should never use these to take off something. And once you get the click indicating that you're at torque, you don't keep on torquing down on it. I don't know how true that is, but that's what they say. Now after I've done all of them once, I like going around one more time. There we go. Torqued. And when you're done using a torque wrench, a clicker type, always, always, always reset it to 0. Treat this like china, like fine china. It'll hold its calibration for a long time unless you abuse it or, you know, don't release the tension, use it the wrong way, what have you. This will last a long time. This is not a very new one. This is probably 30 or 40 years old. Don't forget, clean up any fingerprints that you left on the white paint or on the black plastic, whatever. A little bit of brake clean on a rag will clean it right up. It'll also take any wax off of the surface, so you'll want to touch that up. But that's all there is to it. It's a little labor intensive. It's not difficult, but it's not stupid easy. I'd give it a 5 on the difficulty scale, as long as you're mechanically inclined. Now I get to do it 3 more times. Fun stuff.